After Ryan Miller proposed to me for the 108th time, I finally agreed to marry him. On the night we got our marriage certificate, I received an anonymous video. In the video, Ryan was kneeling on the marble floor in the center of a shopping mall. In front of him stood a woman in a white dress. "Emily, I was wrong. Please don't leave me," he said, his voice especially clear in the empty space of the mall. A crowd had gathered around, filming the scene. Some were live streaming it, and the comments were pouring in. "This guy's kneeling to another woman on his wedding day? What a scumbag. Who's Emily? Didn't Mr. Miller just get married today? Place your bets, folks. Who's Ryan spending the night with?" Watching the pathetic sight of Ryan groveling in the video, I suddenly remembered what he had said the first time he proposed to me. "Sophia, in this life I'll only ever kneel to one woman." But now, he was on his knees in front of someone else. I set down my phone, walked over to the safe, and took out the equity transfer agreement Ryan had signed during his first proposal. Back then, to show his sincerity, he had voluntarily signed it. If he ever betrayed me, all the shares under his name would be transferred to mine. I signed my name on the document. This marriage, which he had earned with 108 proposals, was going to cost him on the very first day. My phone rang. It was Ryan. "Honey, I probably won't be able to come home tonight," he said, his voice sounding a little tired. "There's an urgent project at work that needs to be handled overnight." I looked at the timestamp in the video. It was taken just 10 minutes ago. "Must be tough," I said calmly. "I'll make it up to you tomorrow, I promise. I already booked the presidential suite in the Maldives for our honeymoon." "All right," I replied simply. After hanging up, I sent a message to my private investigator. "Begin the operation. Since he chose to deceive me, he shouldn't blame me for being ruthless." The next morning, Ryan came home holding a massive bouquet of roses, his face still carrying the fatigue of the night before. "Babe, last night was crazy busy. I didn't sleep at all," he said, kissing me lightly on the cheek. "Did you miss me?" I picked up my coffee cup and looked at him indifferently. "Of course." He let out a sigh of relief. "By the way, the new designer at the company is named Emily Clark. She worked late with me last night on the proposal. She's actually a really great person." My hand trembled slightly when I heard that name. He actually dared to bring her up in front of me. "Really?" I put down my coffee cup. "When will you introduce me to her?" A flash of panic appeared in Ryan's eyes, but he quickly recovered. "She's pretty shy. Maybe another time." "All right." I got up and prepared to leave for the law firm. "I might be home late today. I have an important case to handle." "What kind of case is it?" he asked. "A corporate equity dispute," I replied, looking straight into his eyes. "The amount involved is huge, enough to bankrupt an entire company." Ryan's expression darkened immediately. I picked up my bag and whispered softly in his ear. "Sweetheart, people need to be honest, otherwise they'll pay the price." With that, I walked away without looking back. When I arrived at the firm, my assistant, Lily, handed me a report. "Miss Carter, here's all the information you requested." I opened it. The report detailed the timeline of Ryan's relationship with Emily Clark. It turned out they had started seeing each other 3 months ago. And there I was, like a fool, still deeply moved by his 108th proposal. On the last page of the report, it read, "Emily Clark, 26 years old, interior designer, single. Currently engaged in an inappropriate relationship with Ryan Miller. Last night, they had an argument in the central atrium of Wanda Mall. Ryan Miller publicly knelt down, begging her to stay." I closed the report and downed a glass of red wine in one go. "Since you like kneeling in public so much, Ryan, I'll make sure you kneel to your heart's content." 3 p.m. I arrived right on time. This mall, Wanda Plaza, was where Ryan Miller and Emily Clark often met up. It was also the very spot where he had knelt down last night. I made my way to the mall's security office, pulled out my attorney's license, and said, "I need access to the surveillance footage from last night. It's related to an important case." The supervisor glanced at my credentials and, without hesitation, cooperated by pulling up the video. On screen, Ryan and Emily were arguing at the entrance of a jewelry store. "Emily, please, let me explain. My marriage to her was only contractual. The only one I love is you," Ryan said, grabbing her hand. "Then why did you marry her?" Emily yanked her hand away, tears in her eyes. "The company needed funding. Her family has money, he replied. His words sent a chill through my heart. When the company gets through this rough patch, I'll divorce her and marry you, Ryan promised. I don't believe you, Emily said and turned to leave. In a panic, Ryan suddenly dropped to his knees with a thud. Emily, I swear, you're the only one I love. If I'm lying to you, may lightning strike me dead. More and more people gathered around. Some filmed the scene. Others whispered among themselves. Isn't that the CEO of Miller Group? Yeah, he was trending yesterday. Just got married to that brilliant woman from Greenworld, Sophia Carter. And now he's already cheating? What a scumbag. I turned to the supervisor. Please copy the video for me. This is evidence. I need to take it with me. After leaving the security office, I walked straight to the jewelry store in the mall. A sales associate spotted me and lit up. Miss Carter, you're here. The ring Mr. Miller ordered for you is ready. I paused. What ring? The custom 5-carat diamond ring, the associate said brightly. Mr. Miller said he wanted to surprise his wife. I gave a cold inward laugh, but on the surface I played along. Oh, a surprise? The associate leaned in slightly, clearly eager to gossip. Well, he came in yesterday with another woman. They had a bit of a fight. That woman got upset when she saw the ring was made for you. She called Mr. Miller a liar. He ended up kneeling and trying to comfort her. Then he ordered her a ring too, an identical one. Identical. In Ryan Miller's mind, there wasn't even a difference between us. I don't want the ring anymore, I said, turning to leave. You don't need to refund it either. Consider it a tip. As I stepped out of the jewelry store, my phone rang. It was Ryan. Babe, where are you? His voice sounded nervous. I'm at the mall buying a gift for you, I replied, watching the bustling crowd around me. What are you up to? Bookmark, go back. Nothing much, just thinking about you, he said. Oh, really? I walked toward the exact spot where he'd knelt down last night. Then can you come be with me right now? There was a brief pause on the line. I'm meeting with a client. We're discussing a design project. The client's being kind of difficult. I let out a soft laugh. Ryan, do you know what happens when you lie? What do you mean? His voice trembled slightly. Nothing, I said flatly and hung up. Standing in the place where he had publicly knelt for another woman just the night before, I suddenly found it all ridiculous. 5 years of being together, 108 proposals. In the end, it was all just a lie. I pulled out my phone and sent a message to my private investigator. Initiate Plan B. The reply came quickly. Understood. It'll be done. I checked my watch. 2 more hours, and Ryan Miller would receive a very special gift. As for me, I was on my way to meet someone who could help me destroy him completely. I headed toward the mall's cafe. There sat a middle-aged man. He was Ryan Miller's business rival and the person I had come to meet today. Mr. Wang, I've heard so much about you, I said as I took a seat across from him. Mr. Wang looked at me with a flash of surprise in his eyes. Miss Carter, I didn't expect you to reach out to me. I have a business proposal for you, I said, pulling out a document. It's about Miller Group. He took the folder from my hands. The more he read, the more excitement crept onto his face. Miss Carter, is all this information real? I cut him off. Miller Group's capital chain is on the verge of collapse. If someone were to push things a little at this point? I understand, he said, setting the file down. What do you need me to do? Tomorrow morning, Miller Group is holding a board meeting to discuss a new financing plan. I told him, locking eyes. I'd like you to attend. In what capacity, he asked. As a creditor, I replied, pulling out another document. This is the list of debts Miller Group owes your company, totaling 300 million yuan. Mr. Wang took the sheet and inhaled sharply. These are legitimate debts? All backed by contracts and evidence, I said plainly. All you have to do tomorrow is show up and demand repayment in full. And if they can't pay? Then file for bankruptcy and liquidation, I said, standing up. At that point, you'll have the opportunity to acquire Miller Group's prime assets at a very low price. Mr. Wang's eyes lit up. It's a solid plan. Then it's a deal. I extended my hand. He shook it firmly. Miss Carter, you're really going for Ryan's throat. He owes me, I said calmly. It's time he paid up. Leaving the cafe, I glanced at my watch. 1 hour to go. The show was about to begin. At 7 p.m. sharp, I returned home. Ryan was already in the living room, his face dark and stormy. Sophia, we need to talk, he said, his tone serious. About what? I set down my bag and sat on the couch as if nothing were out of the ordinary. He took out his phone. Someone sent me photos of you meeting with Vincent Wong in a cafe. I looked at the photos. They were indeed of me and Mr. Wong from this afternoon. And, I asked, my voice completely calm, Vincent Wong is my competitor. Why are you getting involved with him? Ryan's eyes blazed with fury. Are you doing something behind my back? I couldn't help but laugh. Ryan Miller, are you interrogating me? I stood and looked him dead in the eyes. What right do you have to question me? I'm your husband. Of course I have the right. Husband? I pulled out my phone and played the surveillance footage from the mall. This is how you act as a husband. The color drained from his face the moment he saw the video. Sophia, please, let me explain. Explain what? I cut him off. Explain why you were kneeling in front of another woman on the day we got married. Explain why you bought her a ring identical to mine. Or maybe explain why you told her in front of all those people that you only married me for money. Ryan opened his mouth, but nothing came out. From the moment you chose to betray me, Ryan, this game began, I said, walking over to the safe and pulling out the equity transfer agreement. Remember this? His face turned even paler when he saw the document. This agreement is now in effect. I placed it on the coffee table. As of today, all equity in Miller Group belongs to me. No way. Ryan lunged forward, trying to snatch the agreement from the table. I never agreed to this. You already did. I pulled out another document. This is the audio recording from last night at the mall. You clearly stated that you married me for money. This constituted a breach as outlined in the agreement. Ryan stared at the audio file, completely stunned. Sophia, is this your way of getting revenge on me? That's right, I replied, watching the panic spread across his face. You thought betraying me wouldn't come with a price? Then why did you meet with Vincent Wong? He asked. Because Miller Group is going bankrupt tomorrow, I said, taking out the debt summary. These are the debts your company owes Mr. Wong's firm, a total of 300 million yuan. Tomorrow, he's going to demand full repayment. Ryan snatched the list from my hand. The more he read, the darker his expression became. Some of these debts are fake? Which one? I asked coldly. Every single item has a contract, transfer record, and your company's official stamp. Show me one that isn't real. He flipped through all the documents, desperately trying to find a flaw, but there were none. They're all real, he finally admitted, but I had previously negotiated extensions through various means. And now, I've consolidated every single one of those debts under Vincent Wong's name, I cut in, and he'll be collecting them all at once. Sophia, you can't do this. Ryan dropped to his knees. This company is my life's work. You can't destroy it. Your life's work, I looked down at him towering above. What about mine? 5 years of my life. 108 proposals I was foolish enough to believe in, and in the end, it was all a scam. Doesn't my heart and effort count for anything? I know I was wrong. I really do, Ryan cried, clutching my leg. I'll break up with Emily. Let's start over, please. Too late. I kicked him away. Ryan Miller, remember this. There are some things in this world that once lost can never be regained. Trust, for example, or love. He collapsed to the floor, completely broken, eyes filled with despair. Sophia, please, just give me one more chance. Chance? I picked up my bag and walked to the door. You've already used up every last one. At the door, I turned to glance back at him one final time. Oh, and tomorrow at 9 a.m., I'll see you at the board meeting. Don't forget to bring Emily. She should see what kind of man she's thrown herself at, while he loses everything. Without waiting for a response, I walked out. Behind me, I could hear Ryan's anguished sobs, but I didn't feel the slightest bit of sympathy. He chose betrayal. Now, he would face the consequences. And this was only the beginning. I drove to a hotel and checked in at the front desk. I'd like your best suite, I told the receptionist. Yes, Miss Carter. She respectfully handed me the key card. Your suite is on the 28th floor. If you need anything, don't hesitate to let us know. Inside the elevator, I looked at my reflection in the mirror. The Sophia Carter from 5 years ago was innocent and kind, convinced that love could conquer all. The Sophia Carter today was calm and rational, now fully aware that only power could protect her. Thank you, Ryan Miller, for helping me grow up. But we're far from done. The next morning at 8:30 a.m., I arrived at the entrance of Miller Group's headquarters. I had deliberately dressed in a black business suit, my hair tied back into a sharp ponytail. I looked exactly like someone about to deliver a death sentence. Vincent Wong's car was already parked outside. He brought a full legal team with him. "Miss Carter, are you ready?" he asked as he approached. "Absolutely." I glanced at my watch. 20 more minutes. The show's about to begin. Inside the Miller Group building, the receptionist looked surprised to see me. "Miss Carter, you're here," she said respectfully. "Mr. Miller is waiting upstairs." "I know," I replied and walked straight toward the elevator. I arrived at the boardroom doors. ChatGPT.noi. I heard shouting from inside the boardroom. "The company's capital chain is seriously strained," said the CFO's voice. "We need to find a new investor as soon as possible," another board member added. "Designer Lynn's project is actually very promising. If we can land that big contract." The moment I heard Emily Clark's name, I pushed open the door and stepped inside. The room instantly fell silent. All eyes turned to me. Ryan Miller sat at the head of the table. He looked haggard, his face drawn, his eyes bloodshot. Sitting beside him was a young, beautiful woman, Emily Clark. "Apologies, everyone," I said with poise as I walked toward the conference table. "I'm a little late. May I ask what topic is currently being discussed?" "Sophia, what are you doing here?" Ryan stood up, his voice laced with panic. "Why wouldn't I be here?" I asked, pulling out the equity transfer agreement. "As the new controlling shareholder of Miller Group, I have every right to attend this board meeting." A wave of murmurs rippled through the room. "Controlling shareholder? Mr. Miller? What is she talking about?" Ryan's face turned even more ashen, but he forced himself to respond. This is just a misunderstanding. Sophia and I were joking. It was just a joke." I placed the agreement on the table. "This is a notarized equity transfer agreement. It's legally binding. As of yesterday, I am the largest shareholder in Miller Group." The CFO picked up the document and skimmed through it. His expression changed dramatically. This is real. "Mr. Miller, did you really transfer the company's shares to Miss Carter?" one of the board members asked in disbelief. Ryan opened his mouth but couldn't form a single word. "Well, since I am now a shareholder," I said, "I propose we elect a new chairman of the board. Myself. Does anyone second that?" "I do," the CFO raised his hand immediately. "So do I," said another board member. "I support the motion." Soon, everyone except Ryan and Emily had raised their hands. "Good," I said. "From this moment forward, I am the new chairwoman of Miller Group." I sat down in the head seat. "Now, let's move on to our first agenda item, resolving the company's debt crisis." Just as I began, the door to the boardroom swung open. Vincent Wong entered, flanked by a full legal team. "Apologies for the interruption," he said politely. "I'm Vincent Wong. I'm here to discuss some outstanding debts with Miller Group." The moment Ryan saw him, the color drained from his face. "Mr. Wang, why are you here?" "Mr. Miller," Vincent replied, pulling out the debt list. "Your company owes my firm a total of 300 million yuan. I'm here today to request immediate repayment." The number hit the room like a thunderclap. 300 million? One board member gasped. "Our company has that much debt?" the CFO blurted out. "Every single item has a contract and proof of transaction," Vincent replied calmly. His lawyers handed out copies of the documents to everyone. "Please take a look." Ryan's hands trembled as he received the files. He recognized every debt; they were real. But he had signed agreements to extend those repayments. Why were they suddenly being recalled all at once? "Mr. Wong, there were extension agreements in place for these debts," Ryan said, trying to explain. "All of them have expired," Vincent replied coldly. "And according to the contracts, once overdue, we have the right to demand full and immediate repayment." "But our company's current liquidity is only 50 million, the CFO said, panicked. "Then file for bankruptcy and liquidate," I said calmly. "It's not like the company can continue operations anyway." "No," Ryan shot to his feet. "The company can't go bankrupt." "Then do you have a better idea?" I asked. Looking at him steadily, I looked straight at him. "So Ryan, how exactly do you plan to repay 300 million? Ryan turned to Emily Clark, desperation flickering in his eyes. Emily stood up. "I have a project that could help the company through this crisis." "What project?" I asked, genuinely intrigued. "It's a large-scale commercial complex design project, Valued at 1 billion yuan, she said confidently. The profit margin is at least 300 million. I've already negotiated most of the deal with the client. Is that so? I pulled out my phone. Then let me give this client a quick call to confirm. As I spoke, I dialed a number. Hello, Mr. Lee, this is Sophia Carter. A man's voice answered on the other end. Attorney Carter, how can I help you? I just want to confirm something. Have you already signed a design contract with someone named Emily Clark? There was a pause. Then Mr. Lai replied, Emily Clark? We've never worked with anyone by that name. Our design contract is with you, Miss Carter. Did you forget? The moment those words left his mouth, the entire conference room fell into a heavy silence. Emily's face turned deathly pale. I hung up the phone and smiled at her. Miss Clark, that's quite an interesting project you pitched. Emily slumped back into her chair, her complexion as white as paper. Aye, she stammered, but couldn't finish a sentence. Ryan quickly jumped in. This must be a misunderstanding. Emily wouldn't lie to me. A misunderstanding? I let out a cold laugh. Mr. Miller, your girlfriend tried to deceive you with a fake project. Does that sound like a misunderstanding to you? At the word girlfriend, the board members' expressions changed instantly, stunned and disbelieving. Mr. Miller, the CFO asked cautiously, this Miss Clark, is she really your? Ryan's face flushed red with embarrassment. He opened his mouth but didn't know how to explain. Allow me to clarify, I said, standing up. Miss Emily Clark is Mr. Miller's mistress. On the very day of our wedding, Mr. Miller knelt in a shopping mall and begged her for forgiveness. As I spoke, I played the surveillance video on my phone. In the footage, Ryan could be seen on his knees, pleading with Emily. The room fell completely silent. Mr. Miller, this is, one board member looked at him, speechless. Now you all understand, don't you? I closed my phone. Mr. Miller not only betrayed his wife, but he also tried to deceive the board with a fabricated project. Is this the kind of man who deserves to remain as our chairman? I propose we remove Ryan Miller from his position as chairman of the board. The CFO was the first to stand up. I support the motion. So do I. Agreed. One by one, hands went up. Everyone raised theirs, except for Ryan and Emily. Motion passed, I declared. I hereby announce that Mr. Ryan Miller is officially removed from his position as chairman of Miller Group. Ryan collapsed into his chair, his eyes filled with hopelessness. Sophia, you can't do this. I can. I pulled out another document. This is the new board resolution. In light of the company's severe debt crisis, the board has decided to bring in a strategic investor. Right on cue, Vincent Wang stood up. I'm willing to invest in Miller Group and help it weather the storm. What are your terms, Mr. Wang? I asked. I'm willing to invest 500 million yuan, he said, in exchange for 60% of Miller Group's equity. At that, Ryan jumped up. No, that's daylight robbery. Mr. Miller, you are no longer the chairman, I said coldly. You don't have the right to speak. Besides, do you have any other options besides Mr. Wang's investment? Ryan turned to look at the other board members, hoping for support, but no one met his eyes. Does anyone on the board have objections to Mr. Wang's offer? I asked. I think it's a good deal, said the CFO. At least it'll save the company. I agree as well. With all votes quickly in favor, the investment agreement was passed. Vincent Wang's legal team immediately brought out the contracts that had been prepared in advance. Please, board members, your signatures, one of the lawyers said. As I watched each board member sign the agreement one after another, tears of despair welled up in Ryan Miller's eyes. The company he had built from the ground up was now being taken from him, by me. You win, Sophia, Ryan said weakly. Are you satisfied now? Am I satisfied? I walked up to him. Ryan, this is just the beginning. As I spoke, I pulled out another document. What's this? Ryan's hands trembled as he took it from me. A lawsuit, I said calmly. I'm suing you and Emily Clark for fraud and bigamy. Bigamy? Ryan looked at me, clearly confused. Did you forget? I asked as I pulled out a photograph. This is a picture of you and Emily outside the Civil Affairs Bureau, holding your marriage certificate. Ryan took the photo, and his face immediately turned ghostly pale. In the image, he and Emily were indeed standing in front of the Civil Affairs Bureau, holding the unmistakable red certificate folders. But he remembered, they had only gone there to request some documents, not to get married. This photo is fake, Ryan said anxiously. We didn't get married. Real or fake, I replied as I retrieved the photo. The judge will determine that. But even if it is fake, your relationship with her is more than enough to constitute a case for bigamy. Emily finally broke down and started crying. Sophia Carter, why are you being so cruel? Cruel, I turned to her. Tell me, Miss Clark, did I destroy your relationship or did you destroy my marriage first? Emily was speechless. And regarding your background, I continued, pulling out another file, I've uncovered something quite interesting. Emily Clark's real name is Xiao Shui Lin. 3 years ago, she was convicted of fraud and served time. After being released, she changed her name to Emily Clark. Gasps echoed around the room. Ryan stared at Emily in disbelief. Is that true? He asked. Emily lowered her head, unable to respond. Well done, Mr. Miller, I said sarcastically. You gave up 5 years of marriage for a convicted con artist. Ryan completely broke down. He buried his head in his hands and cried out in pain. I was wrong. I was so wrong. Wrong? I looked down at him from above. Some mistakes, Ryan, come with no second chances. Without waiting for a response, I turned and left the boardroom. Behind me, his cries of anguish rang through the corridor, but my heart remained untouched. This was the cost of betrayal, and this revenge was far from over. As I stepped out of Miller Group's building, my phone rang. It was my assistant, Lily. Miss Carter, I found everything you asked for, she said, excitement in her voice. You won't believe what we discovered. I'm on my way back to the office, I said, getting into the car. Emily Clark not only has a criminal record for fraud, Lily continued, she's also married. I froze for a second. Are you sure? 100%, she replied. I already spoke with her husband, a man named Wei Jiang. They're still legally married. What? I asked, stunned. He said she disappeared 3 years ago and hasn't been heard from since. Now that he knows she's been living with Ryan Miller, he's furious and wants to meet you. Arrange the meeting for tomorrow morning, I instructed. Set the location at the cafe in Wanda Plaza. Yes, Miss Carter? After ending the call, I let out a quiet, cold laugh. Emily Clark, your secrets just keep getting better. Back at the law firm, I began preparing for tomorrow's conversation. If Wei Jiang truly was still legally married to Emily, then her relationship with Ryan wasn't just an affair, it was bigamy. And bigamy could land her in prison. The next morning, I arrived at the cafe in Wanda Plaza right on time. Not long after, a middle-aged man approached, visibly nervous. Are you Attorney Carter? He asked cautiously. Yes, I nodded. Please have a seat. I'm Wei Jiang. Take a seat, Mr. Jiang. I gestured to the chair across from me. I heard you're Emily Clark's husband. Yes, Wei Jiang confirmed with a firm nod. We got married 3 years ago, but she disappeared not long after. I haven't heard from her since. Do you have a marriage certificate? He pulled a red booklet from his bag. This is our marriage certificate. I took it and examined it. It was real. Mr. Jiang, are you aware of what Emily is doing now? I heard she's involved with some businessman named Ryan Miller, he replied, his voice brimming with anger. That's betrayal. She's still my wife. That's not all, I said as I took out my phone and showed him a few photos. She even tried to marry Ryan Miller. Wei Jiang's face flushed bright red with rage when he saw the images. That vile woman, he shouted, slamming his hand on the table. She actually tried to commit bigamy. Mr. Jiang, if you're willing to testify, I can help you sue Emily for bigamy, I said calmly. I'm absolutely willing, he answered, without hesitation. She needs to pay for what she's done. Just then, 2 familiar figures appeared at the entrance of the cafe, Ryan Miller and Emily Clark, hand in hand. Ryan froze when he saw me, then instinctively tried to turn around and leave with her. Mr. Miller, I said loudly, since you're here, why don't you join us for a chat? Left with no choice, Ryan reluctantly walked over. Sophia, what are you doing here? He asked stiffly. I'm meeting a friend, I replied smoothly. Then I looked over at Wei Jiang. Mr. Jiang, would you like to say hello to them? Wei Jiang stood up, his eyes locked furiously on Emily. Xiao Shui Lin, you've finally shown yourself. At the sound of that name, Emily's face turned a ghostly white. You're, she stammered, taking a shaky step back. I'm your husband, Wei Jiang said loudly. You disappeared for 3 years, and now I find you here, playing mistress to someone else. Ryan visibly jolted at the word husband. Emily, what is he talking about? He asked, bewildered. Emily opened her mouth, trying to explain, but no words came out. She didn't tell you? Wei Zhang sneered. We got married 3 years ago. We're still legally married. He pulled out their marriage certificate and held it out to Ryan. Ryan took the document with trembling hands. His face went pale, deathly pale. Emily, is this true? He asked, his voice shaking. Emily finally broke down in tears. Ryan, I can explain. Explain what? He suddenly shouted. Explain that you already have a husband? Explain that you've been lying to me this entire time? Other customers in the cafe were beginning to stare. Some had even started recording the scene on their phones. Sir, please keep your voice down, a server came over and said politely. But Ryan didn't hear her. His eyes were red with anger as he glared at Emily. 3 years. I've been with you for 3 years. And you never once told me you were married? Please, Ryan, let me explain, Emily sobbed, reaching out for his hand. Ryan jerked away from her. Explain what? How you conned me. Or how you conveniently forgot to mention your criminal record. At the mention of her fraud conviction, the surrounding crowd started murmuring. She has a criminal record? Someone whispered. But she looks so decent. I never thought she was a con artist. Isn't that guy the CEO of Miller Group? He got played hard. The murmurs around the cafe grew louder. Emily Clark couldn't handle the scrutiny any longer. She turned and tried to run, but Wei Zhang stepped in front of her, blocking her way. Trying to run? He sneered. Xiao Shui Lin, you still haven't paid back what you owe me. What debt? Ryan asked sharply. She borrowed 500,000 yuan from me before our marriage. Wei Zhang said. Claimed it was for an investment. Then she disappeared and took everything. With interest, she owes me at least 1 million now. Ryan stared at Emily, the last thread of hope draining from his face. His eyes were filled with pure hatred. So from the beginning, you were just using me, he said quietly, his voice frighteningly calm. My company is bankrupt, my marriage is destroyed, and it was all for a con artist. Emily could only cry, unable to form a single word. Then Ryan laughed, a hollow, broken sound. You win, Sophia, he said, looking at me. You've completely won. I was never competing with you, I said coolly. You're the one who chose this path. Ryan nodded slowly, then turned and walked out of the cafe, leaving Emily alone, surrounded by Wei Zhang and the gathering crowd. I sat there in silence, watching everything unfold. Revenge had gone even more smoothly than I had imagined. After Ryan left, the atmosphere in the cafe grew more intense. Wei Zhang pointed an angry finger at Emily. Xiao Shui Lin, you're coming home with me. I'm not going back with you, she cried, backing away. There's no love between us anymore. No love, Wei Zhang scoffed. Then why didn't you file for divorce? Why haven't you paid me back? More and more people gathered around. Some were recording the scene and posting it online. Isn't that the woman who ruined someone else's marriage? Turns out she already had a husband. That's cheating on 2 men. Shameless. Emily was completely overwhelmed by the accusations and the pointing fingers. She finally broke down and bolted from the cafe. But the moment she reached the center atrium of the mall, she was surrounded by a swarm of reporters. Miss Clark, do you have any comment on being involved in someone else's marriage? Can you confirm whether you have a prior fraud conviction? What's the status of your marriage with Mr. Zhang? Faced with a barrage of questions, Emily stood frozen, speechless. She tried to push through the crowd, but the reporters were packed in too tightly. Then suddenly, Ryan appeared again. He shoved the reporters aside and grabbed Emily by the arm. Come with me, he said, his voice icy cold. Ryan? Emily looked up at him with a glimmer of hope in her eyes, but his next words shattered her completely. We're going to the civil office to file for divorce. What? Emily gasped. We're not even married. Don't pretend, Ryan snapped, pulling out a photo. This is the one you made me take yesterday, said it was for keepsake memories. Now I know, you planned to use this to trick others into thinking we were legally married. The photo clearly showed the two of them standing outside the Civil Affairs Bureau, holding red folders. But those weren't marriage certificates, they were simply Ryan's ID documents. Ryan, that's a misunderstanding, I swear, Emily pleaded. Enough, he shouted. I see you clearly now, Emily Clark. No, Xiao Shui Lin. You are nothing but a fraud, through and through. With that, he let go of her arm and turned away. As of today, we're done. Completely. Emily tried to chase after him, but Wei Zhang stepped in and grabbed her wrist. You're not going anywhere. You still owe me and you're going to repay it. I have no money. Emily sobbed. No money? Wei Zhang sneered. Then you'll pay me another way. As he spoke, he pulled out his phone and took a few photos of Emily in her disheveled state. I'll post these photos online, Wei Zhang snarled. Let the world see who you really are. No. Emily Clark lunged for his phone, but he shoved her aside. Watching the scene unfold, I knew it was time to step in. I walked up to them calmly. Mr. Zhang, causing a public disturbance like this isn't appropriate. The moment he saw me, Wei Zhang's attitude shifted to respectful. You're right, Attorney Carter. I should handle this through legal means. Then let's call the police, I said, pulling out my phone. Emily Clark is suspected of fraud and bigamy. Let the authorities deal with it. The moment I mentioned the police, panic washed over Emily's face. No, don't call the police, she cried, dropping to her knees in front of me. Sophia, please, I'm begging you, let me go. Let you go? I looked down at her, my voice cold. Did you think about letting me go when you destroyed my marriage? I know I was wrong. I swear I know, she sobbed, tears streaming down her face. I'll leave Ryan. I'll divorce Wei Zhang. Just, please, don't report me. Too late. I already had 911 on the line. Hello? Yes, I'd like to report a case of fraud and bigamy. Hearing me speak to the police, Emily collapsed to the floor, eyes empty, her body trembling with despair. It didn't take long for the police to arrive on the scene. Who made the report? An officer asked. I stood and showed my attorney credentials. I'm Sophia Carter. I'm reporting this woman for fraud and bigamy. The officer examined my ID, then began asking questions. With Wei Zhang's testimony and the evidence we provided, the police quickly took Emily into custody. As she was being escorted away, she turned back to look at me, eyes full of hatred and hopelessness. But I felt nothing. No pity, no sympathy. This was the end she brought on herself. As the police car drove off, I took out my phone and sent a message to Ryan. The show's over. Your sweetheart is headed to prison. Satisfied? He replied quickly. Sophia Carter, you're ruthless. I stared at the message and let out a low, bitter laugh. Ruthless? This is just the beginning. My plan for revenge wasn't finished yet. Now it was Ryan Miller's turn. I picked up my phone and dialed Vincent Wang. Mr. Wang, you can move forward with the second phase. Understood, Attorney Carter, he said, clearly thrilled. I guarantee Ryan Miller will never recover from this. After hanging up, I looked around the mall's central atrium. This was the place where Ryan once knelt before Emily. Now, Emily was in jail. Ryan had lost everything. And I was still standing, right here. Being the winner felt damn good. 3 days later, I received an unexpected call. It was from Ryan. Sophia, can we meet? His voice was weak, weary. There are some things I want to say to you. Things that can't be said over the phone? I asked flatly, flipping through documents on my desk. I want to apologize in person, he said. And I want to know when you started planning all of this. His question sparked my curiosity. All right, I said. Let's meet. I checked my watch. Same place, Wanda Plaza Cafe. 1 hour. Okay, he said, and the call ended. I adjusted my clothes and prepared for the meeting. Exactly 1 hour later, I walked into the cafe. Ryan was already there, waiting. He looked worn down, exhausted, bloodshot eyes, clearly sleep-deprived for days. Sit, I said, taking the seat across from him. I'm sorry, Sophia. Ryan Miller's first words were an apology. I know I hurt you. I know I made an unforgivable mistake. And, I asked calmly, I just want to know, when did you start suspecting me? He looked into my eyes. I thought I hid it well. I let out a quiet laugh. Ryan, you really think you hid it well? Didn't I? Let me show you something. I pulled out my phone. 3 months ago, I hired a private investigator to follow you. Ryan's face drained of color. You knew all along. Not only did I know about your relationship with Emily Clark, I said, scrolling through my phone, I knew every location you met, every time you checked into a hotel. Want to see the photos? He shook his head slowly. He didn't need to see them. Then why? He stopped mid-sentence. He wanted to ask why I still accepted his proposal. Why I still married him. I finished it for him. Why did I go through with it? Yes, he said quietly, because I needed a legal identity to claim everything you owned. What does that mean? He asked, confused. Ryan, did you really think you signed that equity transfer agreement out of impulse? I gave a cold laugh. That agreement was a carefully laid trap. His eyes widened in shock. Remember the day after I rejected your first proposal? I continued. You ran into a fortune teller. He told you that you were destined to meet a woman who would help your business flourish, but only if you showed absolute sincerity. Ryan's expression twisted with realization. That fortune teller was an actor I hired, I said evenly. His job was to convince you to sign that agreement voluntarily. No, Ryan shook his head. You couldn't have planned all that. Why not? I pulled out another file. This is the playbook I wrote 3 months ago. It outlines how I'd get you to sign the agreement, how I'd gather evidence of your affairs, how I'd push your company to collapse, every single step, documented in detail. He took the folder and flipped through it. With each page, his face grew paler. The timeline, the locations, it was frighteningly accurate. Why would you do all this? His voice trembled. We had 5 years together. 5 years? I laughed bitterly. Do you know when I stopped believing in you, Ryan? When? The first time you cheated, 2 years ago. His eyes widened in shock. You thought Emily was the only one? I stared at him. Before her, there was your assistant Zoe, your client Miss Wang, even your trainer at the gym, Liam. Ryan went completely pale. I knew about all of them, I said coldly, and each time I gave you a chance to come clean. Each time you chose lies over honesty. Sophia, So that's when I started planning all of this. I cut him off. 2 years was more than enough for me to build a web tight enough that even you couldn't slip through. Ryan slumped into his chair, eyes full of despair. You knew about Emily from the beginning, too? He asked. Of course. I nodded. Her fraud record, her marriage to Wei Zhang. I knew it all. I even knew she approached you with a purpose. What purpose? He asked. She wanted your money, I said, pulling out another file. She owed loan sharks 3 million yuan. She needed a large amount fast. That's why she invented that fake design project. She wanted to scam money out of you. Ryan stared blankly at the documents, completely frozen. So from beginning to end, I was just a fool, he muttered with a bitter smile. You finally understand, I said, standing up to leave. That's the price of betrayal. Sophia, wait, Ryan called after me. You already have everything, my company, my assets. Isn't that enough? Enough? I turned to look at him. Ryan, do you really think a company's shares can compensate for 5 years of my youth and 2 years of humiliation? Then what more do you want? I gave him a soft, knowing smile. You'll find out soon enough. Without another word, I walked away. Behind me, I could hear Ryan's anguished voice, but I didn't look back, because the real show had only just begun. The next morning, I was at the law firm reviewing documents when my assistant Lily rushed in, face pale and panicked. Attorney Carter, something big just happened. I set down the papers. What is it? Ryan Miller's been arrested, she said. They say it's for contract fraud involving a massive amount of money. I didn't even flinch. When did it happen? This morning, she replied. The police went straight to his house. It's all over the news. I opened my laptop. Sure enough, headlines were everywhere. Former Miller Group chairman Ryan Miller arrested for contract fraud. Total involved estimated at 50 million yuan. The comments were exploding below the article. Isn't this the same guy who cheated on his wife? Karma got him. Serves him right, can't be a scumbag and expect to walk free. I closed the page and called Vincent Wang. Mr. Wang, the plan is going smoothly. Yes, Attorney Carter, he replied, clearly satisfied. Those contracts were indeed problematic, more than enough to land Ryan in prison for several years. All of them were signed during his time with Emily Clark, I said. To satisfy her demands, he broke compliance on several projects. And now all of those violations are evidence, Vincent added. But, Attorney Carter, are you really not going to defend him? You're one of the best in the business. Defend him? I gave a cold laugh. Mr. Wang, do you really think I'd defend someone who betrayed me? You're right, he said quickly. I spoke without thinking. My apologies. After hanging up, I stared out the window at the clear blue sky. This, I thought, is the cost of betrayal, Ryan. That afternoon, I received an unexpected phone call from Ryan's mother. Sophia, please, she sobbed over the line. You have to help Ryan. He's being held in the detention center. You're a lawyer, you must know what to do. I'm sorry, Mrs. Miller, I said calmly. There's nothing I can do. Sophia, I know what he did was wrong, but he's still your husband, she pleaded. Please, for the sake of the relationship between us, help him. Our relationship? I gave a cold laugh. Mrs. Miller, Did you think of that relationship when your son cheated on me the day we got married? I know he was wrong, but hasn't he paid enough? She said. He lost his company, his reputation. Isn't that punishment enough? I want him to understand that some mistakes carry consequences for a lifetime, I said bluntly. Sophia, how did you become so cold-hearted? She asked, her voice heavy with disappointment. Cold-hearted. I thought of the years of humiliation I had endured. Mrs. Miller, I'm only reclaiming the fairness I was denied. And with that I hung up. A few days later, Emily Clark's trial also concluded. She was convicted of fraud and bigamy, sentenced to 3 years in prison. That night, I poured myself a glass of red wine and quietly celebrated alone at home. Just as I was sipping, the doorbell rang. I assumed it was a delivery, but when I opened the door, I found Ryan's mother standing there. She looked exhausted and worn down. Her eyes were red and swollen. Clearly, she had been crying for a long time. Mrs. Miller, I was a little surprised. Why are you here? Sophia, I'm begging you, please save Ryan. She dropped to her knees right in front of me. I'm kneeling to you. Please have some mercy. Seeing her like that, I felt a faint pang of guilt. After all, she had always treated me kindly. Mrs. Miller, please get up, I said, helping her to her feet. Let's talk inside. She walked into the apartment and sat down on the couch, still crying. Sophia, he regrets it every single day in that detention center. He says he's sorry, says he knows he was wrong. He knows he was wrong, I said as I sat across from her. If apologies were enough, we wouldn't need the law. Sophia, I know you're capable of helping him. She grabbed my hands tightly. If you agree to defend him, I know his sentence could be reduced. Looking into her hopeful eyes, an idea suddenly came to me. I can represent Ryan, I said. Her eyes lit up instantly. Really? But on one condition, I added. What condition? She asked quickly. I want Ryan to stand before the court and admit all of his wrongdoings, I said. The cheating, the lies, the betrayal, everything. And he must issue a public apology to me. Mrs. Miller hesitated, clearly shocked by the demand. That's the condition, I said firmly. If he refuses, I won't lift a finger. She thought for a long moment, then finally nodded. All right, I'll talk to him. The next day, she returned with Ryan's answer. He had agreed to my terms. Clearly, prison had scared him enough. I began preparing the defense materials, not because I wanted to save him, but because I wanted him to stand in front of everyone and confess to what he had done. That kind of public humiliation would cut deeper than prison ever could. Ryan Miller, did you think you could escape judgment? Even in court, I'll make you pay the price. The trial date arrived quickly. The courtroom was packed. In addition to the parties involved and their lawyers, there were reporters and curious onlookers filling every seat. When Ryan was led into the courtroom by officers, I closely watched his expression. He looked gaunt, worn down, but there was still a glimmer of hope in his eyes. He must have believed I was truly there to save him. After the judge opened the session, the prosecutor began reading the indictment aloud. Ryan Miller was being charged with contract fraud involving a significant amount of money and aggravating circumstances. If found guilty, he could face more than 10 years in prison. When it was my turn to speak, I stood up. Your Honor, my client wishes to plead guilty. Ryan turned to look at me sharply, shock and disbelief in his eyes. But due to courtroom protocol, he couldn't say anything. Defendant, please rise, the judge said. Ryan stood reluctantly. Mr. Miller, do you admit to committing contract fraud? He looked at me. I gave him a slight nod. Yes, he answered in a barely audible voice. I admit it. Very well, the judge said. Are you willing to state the circumstances of your crime? At that moment, I stood again. Your Honor, my client is not only willing to confess his crimes, but also wishes to make a public apology to his wife. Gasps echoed through the courtroom. Everyone knew about Ryan's affair, and now he was about to apologize in open court. It was huge news. Only the defendant may speak, the judge reminded. Ryan took a deep breath and began. My name is Ryan Miller. I committed contract fraud. His voice was loud and clear in the courtroom, but before the crime. I committed an even greater sin, Ryan continued, his voice shaking. I betrayed my wife, Sophia Carter. He turned to look at me. On the very day of our wedding, I was still entangled with another woman. The court erupted. Reporters clicked their shutters furiously, and the sound of camera shutters filled the air. I lied to her. I hurt her. I betrayed the trust she had in me. Ryan's voice quivered more with each word. I gave up a woman who truly loved me for a con artist. I got down on my knees in a shopping mall to beg a mistress for forgiveness. I bought her expensive gifts. I even planned to marry her. Tears streamed down his face, and all that time, my wife was home, waiting for me. A hush fell over the courtroom as heads slowly began to shake. Someone whispered, "This guy deserves whatever punishment he gets." Ryan kept going. "Sophia, I'm sorry. I know it's far too late to say this now, but I need to say it. You're the best woman I've ever known, and I'm the most undeserving man alive." Then, in front of everyone, he dropped to his knees. "I threw away your love. I destroyed your youth. I deserve to rot." Watching him like that, I felt absolutely nothing. Not the slightest ripple of emotion stirred in me. His apology had come far too late. Once the judge restored order, the trial resumed. In the end, Ryan Miller was sentenced to 8 years in prison. Yes, I had defended him in court, but it was only symbolic. My true goal was to force him to confess publicly to his despicable actions. The humiliation would cut deeper than any jail time. As I stepped out of the courtroom, Mrs. Miller caught up with me. "Sophia," she cried angrily, "why did you do this? You could have saved him." "I did defend him," I replied calmly. 8 years is less than 10. That's what my defense achieved. "But you made him confess in front of everyone," she snapped. "To tell the truth," I said, looking her square in the eyes. "Mrs. Miller, do you honestly believe he shouldn't be held accountable for what he did?" She had no answer. Deep down, she knew her son had brought this upon himself. Leaving the courthouse, I got a call from Mr. Warren. "Congratulations, Miss Carter," he said. "You've achieved complete victory. The acquisition of Miller Corporation's assets is finalized. You're now our largest shareholder." "Thank you for your cooperation, Mr. Warren," I said. "Of course," he replied. "So, what's next for you?" I gazed at the crowd bustling outside the courthouse and thought for a moment. "I think I'll go abroad for a while, clear my head. You definitely deserve the break." After we hung up, I drove home. The house was quiet, just as it had been these past 2 years. But now, the silence felt different. It wasn't the painful silence of waiting, it was the peaceful quiet of victory. I walked out to the balcony and looked at the city lights below. "Ryan Miller, this was the price of betrayal. The marriage you bought with 108 proposals ended with 8 years behind bars.